Welcome to the Global Usury Truth Commission. The Global Usury Truth Commission addresses the root cause of systemic violence, social inequalities, and ecological destruction in the global monetary system, and in particular, its systemic violence by the exponential growth dynamics of compound interest. When we are trying to analyze our current socio-ecological problems around the world, it is very important to look for root causes and not to deal in symptoms. Otherwise, things get worse while we falsely believe that we may be working on solutions. But the very root structure of the monetary system is so utterly flawed that it is absolutely essential to point that out. Now, before we go there, let's have a short look at our human condition. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And is all this normal? Are human beings like this and now we are in trouble and yeah, that's human nature and there's nothing we can do about it? Or is there anything more to say? Well, let's see. In the last decennia, uh, we discovered with interdisciplinary science, anthropology, and interpersonal neurophysiology, neuropsychology, neurobiology, that human beings are in fact a loving, kind, compassionate species when they are in a good environment and they have had enough love and care during their development. So we become pathological when we are in survival mode or when we are traumatized. And this can be caused by pathological development or pathological environment. Then we start to suffer from ego madness, right? We get walled in, we become bolstered, and we become inimical to one another, right? We become more separated. You see how human violence and conflict really originates from a fight, flight, freeze response that really walls us in our egos. And this, of course, can go in different types of severity. The most uh, grave type of severity of this social pathology is, of course, psychopathy, where people are incurable and there is no means for empathic connection left, right? They are so completely walled in this ego that their whole uh, potential for compassion, etc., is lost. Now, the main problem that we face is that trauma and structural violence are in fact transmitted from one generation to the next. And so Terry Real, psychotherapist, says it very beautifully. He says trauma is like a fire that is bringing down the trees until someone turns around and faces the flames. So here we are with the Global Usury Truth Commission turning around and facing the flames of what happened to us human beings as a species. How do we get in a situation that has become an existential threat today? So we already said that we have these two things that really matter for love, compassion, and well-being: development and environment. And this has been scientifically very well proven. We know this. We know how love matters, and we know how stressful environments can even make good people to turn evil, so to speak. So, what is enormously important towards the future in the light of the crisis that we face is to absolutely scrutinize social structures and to eliminate systemic violence from them, and to make them in fact socially nurturing and socially intelligent instead of exploitative. Now let's have a close look at history. Things become clear. What we see is that when we were hunter-gatherers, societies were small groups and very egalitarian, very little violence, and even when first agriculture started, small villages and chiefdoms, anthropologists were amazed that there was so little evidence for violence, right? But suddenly, about 5 millennia ago, there is this huge explosion of violence. This coincides with what the Bible describes as the fall, right? Suddenly, paradise was lost, and human beings became enemies upon each other. They, there is evidence at that time for really horrendous cruelty, and it is as if it exploded, right? And strangely, this coincides with the invention of compound interest on credit and with the structural flaw in the monetary system that we will explain. Now, in response to this fall, to this increase in violence and really nastiness and really horrendous cruelty, the Judeo-Christian tradition developed. And it's nice to read like the Psalms, where it's always people complaining about the powerful, exploiting them, being really cruel on them, right? Oppressing the righteous. And it is really crucial to understand that interest on credit is an absolute fundament of the Bible. Interest on credit is one of the key elements in this spirituality, right? It is, you shall not oppress your brother with interest on credit. And this was a society that knew how socially destructive that the centralization of wealth and power by interest was. And so they tried to alleviate it by abolishing it. And they were they found equality so important that among the Jews, even when interest was not allowed, there had to be a debt jubilee, a forgiveness of debt every 50 years or so. So, so much they valued equality. And of course, modern times from the work of Wilkinson and Pickett, now we know that the more equal societies are, the more social well-being there is. So this is absolutely scientifically validated. But in short, we have to conclude that ever since this um, sudden increase in violence in ancient Sumer, Mesopotamia, this area, and sudden um, appearance of usury and centralization of wealth and power, humanity has really struggled with that and tried to abolish it, was sometimes successful, but then it came back once again. And so the core idea of the Global Usury Truth Commission is that we should, for once and for all, get rid of this weapon of mass destruction and exploitation, this horrendously destructive tool that usury is, and really root it not in religion, but in social sciences. We have all scientific evidence we need to basically outlaw it and organize alternatives. So 5 millennia ago, that there was this original monetary sin. And this has been pointed out very good by the people from the Monetary Systems Transparency Alliance. And I would really recommend you look up their work. And they show how the misrepresentation of money is really at the root of all evil that ensued. Because money in systems theory cannot be a measure of value and a commodity at the same time. They are both mutually exclusive. If you use money as a commodity, your system becomes unstable and in fact becomes a source of parasitic wealth extraction and the centralization of wealth and power by misrepresenting money as a commodity. So this misrepresentation has actually enabled the weaponization of money for the centralization of wealth and power. And honestly, yes, it's been 5 millennia. So indeed, we have a Bronze Age monetary system. Look at it. This is basically it. It is a psychopathic monetary system, centralizing wealth and power. Of course, without any conscience, it's a system. For the horrendous socio-ecological consequences of it, it's just a system. It does what it does. Now, of course, there's a lot of psychopaths in the top positions of power that are like this system without conscience benefiting from it. But there's also people in power who are actually unaware of the systemic dynamics, for example. But what we can clearly see from the basic dynamics, it creates a two-class society. So you get the richest 10% of your society that are able to extract wealth from the rest of the population. So we have social injustice by design. Our capitalist societies are unjust by design. From a human rights perspective, they are structurally criminal by design, right? And so, Global Usury Truth Commission uses critical criminology to criminalize what is in fact criminal, right? The exploitation of the vast majority of the population by the richest few. And it is very strange that this system has been normalized and is accepted by the vast majority. And this, of course, is, as Jesus once said, my people are dying from a lack of knowledge, right? People are not aware of this because this is absolutely insane and it kills millions of poor people around the world. So, in fact, as people in democratic societies, we are all collectively responsible to end the structural genocide of this system. Moreover, interest has an exponential growth drive. Now, this makes it so that this monetary system with the exponential growth drive forces our economy into exponential growth. In other words, it is utterly destructive. It is utterly unsustainable. You can already see every mathematician will tell you, man, this is crazy. This is absolutely untenable, right? Hence the joke that two kinds of people believe in exponential growth on a finite planet. One is a madman, the other an economist. But you get the point. The system is completely insane, unsustainable, and it is only kept because it centralizes wealth and power. And so the rich, the people in authoritative positions, they find it well to do, right? But this is, of course, utterly unacceptable. And we must speak truth to power. We must expose this. This is insane. This is untenable. And this has become an existential threat, frankly. So, indeed, as Andrew Sayer phrases it, we cannot afford the rich, right? So, the rich, the top 10% of a society, are in fact a burden on all the rest of us by their extraction of unearned income with a system that is socio-ecologically utterly destructive. Now it's really, really sad when you know how easy it is to organize a global interest-free mutual credit system and how commonsensical it would be, as it is a democratic requirement as well as a human rights requirement. So doing it is just a political imperative, it's an ethical imperative. The fact that it doesn't happen is absolutely deplorable and shows that as a species we are, well, collectively insane basically. Because indeed, for 5 millennia, interest on credit has been a tool for debt slavery. It has been a weapon for plutocracy. The majority is exploited, loses financial and political power, and is mostly unaware of the situation, while a privileged minority, the rich, is really thriving. They are accumulating all kinds of wealth. They are basically privatizing the planet. And so, as they are in the most authoritative positions, there is a kind of perverted balance in society where the majority is mostly unaware and the rich minority is benefiting so much that they are basically not interested in it all. So, well, it's not a nice situation, and it certainly is a very primitive and brutal master-slave society that has a structure that is 5,000 years old. This is not a modern society. This is a very barbaric, ancient, primitive structure. It is important to know. So here we see this is the modern version of the ancient master-slave society. Is a corporatocracy where decentralization of wealth and power has resulted in a capital mass and a corporatocracy that is involved in the further pathological pursuit of profit and power, and not in the well-being or thriving of societies. And so, on a political level, we really live in a very barbaric world that is absolutely uncivilized, that is not something for the future. It is now 5 millennia that these horrendous abuses have been going about. It is really time to use interdisciplinary science. We know how human relations work. We know we should nourish um, our human nature, our vulnerable human nature. And what makes us strong as a species is our capacity to cooperate. So basically, we need to change social structures in a way that nourish societies, that distribute power, and that enhance people to benefit from each other's potential, right? So a society that works for everybody. Now, it's all very logical and would be common sense in a democracy. Yet, there is an overwhelming majority of people who are utterly unaware of this flawed structure of our monetary system and of the exponential growth drive of interest that is really so destructive. So, therefore, the Global Usury Truth Commission will try to raise awareness, and we will campaign for the organization of global interest-free credit and a passive mutual credit system, and the criminalization of any interest on credit as a violation of human rights. And it is very important to make that statement that this exploitation of the population by the rich is a crime against humanity. Let's state it like that. Then we can come to appreciate how much that the current misdistribution of wealth and power has come to be over millennia, really through pathological structures and to a fraudulent money system that really cannot work, cannot be sustainable, but is very effective to centralize wealth and power. So, in short, we need a great transformation. We need to enter modernity, so to speak, as for the last 5 millennia we had such a primitive, barbaric monetary system that we cannot say that we are civilized. We are still in the barbaric ages. So we need a monetary reform and a great transformation that will enable us to go from 5 millennia of psychopathic dominance and exploitation towards a humane civilization. This would be an enormous paradigm shift, like a quantum shift in society. Of course, this will be difficult, but we have to do it. So, thank you. We hope you will join us in these social movements toward a humane civilization, and it's really so great to be here. When you look online, when you look at innovation at universities, etc., you really see that people are waking up to this reality, right? Very much academic literature has something like we need radical structural reform. Well, here we are. We point out the fundamental flaw in the monetary system. Oh, somewhere deep in our hearts, we all have a desire for connection and for society that thrives in love and kindness. We all feel good when things are kind and loving, right? It soothes us. That's who we are deep inside. There is too much human potential and well-being that is wasted by a psychopathic, unsustainable, and absolutely crazy monetary system. But together, we can heal our social, cultural sickness, transform these pathological structures, and make change happen. So, yes, this is a call to action. This is action towards a more humane future. It is very nice and interesting to engage in this, as really the social revolution and transformation that we can bring about is a paradigm shift uh, for the last 5 millennia. We really go from these master slave societies towards more humane societies. And that would be absolutely amazing. So thank you. Bye bye.